Like a lot of people, I went and saw the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie, and I thought it was great. And after watching it, it reminded me of the X-Men Origins Wolverine game and how much I've been wanting to play it again. I honestly can't believe this game came out 15 years ago. I remember reading the review in a Game Informer magazine. By the way, RIP Game Informer. Just booting this up brings back so many memories. I was really curious to see if it still holds up by today's standards. I remember the combat being awesome and brutal, and that regeneration mechanic always stuck in my mind. And after completing it, the short answer is yes, this game definitely holds up, and here's why I think so. I'm going to spend most of this video talking about the gameplay and combat because it's easily the best part of the game. Wolverine is a comic book character whose abilities are perfect for a video game. The way he leaps into a crowd of enemies and tears them to shreds never gets old. The developers perfectly captured the feeling of being Wolverine. The combat is fast, ferocious, brutal, and most importantly, fun as hell. There's a surprising amount of variety that keeps the action from getting stale. It features some basic RPG elements that enhance the gameplay and let you customize your playstyle. There's a move list that expands as you progress, and as you level up and gain skill points, you can purchase damage and health upgrades or improve the 4 special attacks you unlock throughout the game. You earn experience points by beating enemies and finding hidden collectibles like dog tags. There are also mutagens hidden throughout the levels that act as boosts to things like health, the rage meter, or your special attack damage. The hack and slash combat isn't limited to just ground attacks. You can mix in air combos, grabs, slams, finishers, each with their own branches of varied attacks. One crucial mechanic is the lunge. This move is key to maintaining the flow of combat. It's fun and satisfying every time. Sure, you could spam it if you wanted, but why would you when the rest of the combat is so enjoyable? The lunge feels like what the axe is to Kratos in God of War. Speaking of God of War, I definitely get some vibes from that series here, and I wouldn't be surprised if the developers took inspiration from that original God of War. Tell me this gameplay doesn't remind you of it. After a while, you do start to feel pretty OP once your damage, health, and abilities are fully upgraded. But that's okay, because Wolverine can heal from anything. He's supposed to be nearly indestructible, which brings me to another awesome mechanic, the real-time damage and regeneration system. It's still mind-blowing even years later. I don't think anyone had done anything like this before X-Men Origins, but now it's hard to imagine a Wolverine game without it. I'm looking at you, Insomniac. This was a totally new and original idea that still holds up. Watching Wolverine's skin get torn apart and then regenerate was always satisfying. Cool touches like his skeleton being bone in the flashback and adamantium in the present day, or seeing the muscle repair before the skin are awesome. You can see the bullet damage and burns as they happen. These details really made the game stand out. Another mechanic is the parry system. It's easy to master but not essential depending on your playstyle. Personally, I didn't like to give enemies the chance to make me parry. I tried to take them out as fast and viciously as Wolverine would. Of course, there are moments when you have to use it, like in boss battles or against certain enemy types, but it always feels appropriate. Speaking of boss battles, those are another highlight of the game. The Sabretooth fights are some of the best, and his introduction is badass. There's definitely not enough of him in the game in my opinion, especially since the developers brought in Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber to voice their roles. I definitely think the studio could have taken some more creative liberties with their relationship. The first fight in the bar with Sabretooth is gritty with heavy hitting blows. There are some cool environmental interactions and even a location change. The Blob fight in the supermarket was fun. Then there's Gambit, who pretty much gets an entire chapter devoted to his boss battle, spanning across 2 giant hotel buildings. You tear through countless enemies trying to get to Gambit, and the fight happens in several different locations. It was awesome and gave more shine to Gambit than the movie did. Something else the game did better than the movie was create a more interesting story. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty basic compared to the Arkham or Spider-Man games, but the developers threw in some ideas that helped elevate the weaker movie tie-in plot. The game loosely follows the film, using flashbacks and present-day sequences, and it even pulls in elements from Days of Future Past, which leads to an incredible boss battle with a massive Sentinel. But before that, you infiltrate a Sentinel base and uncover Bolivar Trask's plan to wipe out mutant kind. There are a ton of Easter eggs and references found in audio logs that expand on Trask's plan and his alliances with Stryker and Senator Kelly. It really felt like they were building a bigger X-Men universe, but unfortunately it was confined within a movie tie-in. There are references to other mutants and even Xavier's school. Characters like Wraith and Mystique also make appearances and even have roles in the story. But back to the Sentinel fight, there are a few battles with smaller Sentinels throughout the level, and at one point the game makes you think you've taken out the main Sentinel in the base, Then a massive sentinel reveals itself, and after an intense ground battle, it takes flight, leading to an epic sequence where you have to bring it down while plummeting back to Earth. It's easily one of the most memorable moments in the game. After that's when you find Gambit. He takes you to the island where Stryker is performing experiments on mutants. Eventually you confront Stryker, and he reveals his creation, the Deadpool. Now, for all the good the game has going for it, it's not without its flaws. Some aspects feel pretty dated, especially the platforming, which can be clunky and stiff at times. I found myself fighting with the camera throughout my playthrough, and the game is plagued with invisible walls given how linear it is. There were specific sections that got really frustrating, like when you're at the top of this tower fighting enemies and you keep falling off the side, and you're just thinking to yourself, why isn't there an invisible wall here where it would make sense? That leads me to the autosave checkpoint system, which isn't great either. In that same tower level, for instance, every time I fell, I had to start back from the bottom, which got pretty annoying. Little things like no subtitles, having to go back to the main menu to change costumes, and not being able to skip cutscenes were baffling choices even for 2009. There's also no lock-on system outside of the lunge attack, which would have really benefited the combat, and the dialogue, it's hilariously bad at times.
Where I gut you, I want to know why.
Logan, welcome back to the war. We needed your powers for the pool, the mutant killer, the Deadpool.
Oh, and how do you not give Wolverine a sprinting ability? That really drags down the sections where you have to backtrack through the levels. But perhaps the worst thing is how hard it is to get your hands on this game today. If you want a physical 360 or PS3 copy, be prepared to spend over $100. And since it's not available on any digital marketplaces, good luck finding a copy. After beating the game, I was excited to look into the developers Raven Software to see what other games they've made in the past and what they're working on today. To my surprise, they were responsible for some pretty popular titles from the 90s and 2000s, but imagine my disappointment when I found out they've been relegated to making Call of Duty games for Activision for the past decade or so. I'm not saying those are bad games, but it's frustrating to see a studio with that kind of talent and passion reduced to pumping out essentially the same game every few years. You can tell they really respected Wolverine and the fans, delivering something we didn't even know we wanted. In many ways, they paved the way for Insomniac to develop their upcoming Wolverine game. Interestingly enough, I tried to find some interviews with the team about the making of X-Men Origins Wolverine, and I came across two that were particularly interesting. Unfortunately, when I tried to click the links, I got a 404 error, so I ended up asking ChatGPT for a summary of the interviews. The first one was with Dan Vondrak, project lead on X-Men Origins Wolverine, and he pretty much confirmed everything I've said up until this point. He talked about how the team focused on creating a combat system that stayed true to Wolverine's ferocious, fast-paced fighting style. They emphasized brutal, visceral mechanics to make players feel like a powerful, nearly unstoppable force. Dan also mentioned that while the game took inspiration from the movie, Raven Software added original story elements to expand Wolverine's world. He explained that the boss battles were a core part of the game, and that the team wanted to create dream matchups that they as fans had always wanted to see. And you can really feel that passion. The other interview with Jeff Poffenbarger, another member of the development team, focused more on Wolverine's healing ability in the game. He talked about how the healing factor was a major focus for the team because they wanted players to feel Wolverine's regenerative power. It was designed to showcase his durability and ability to heal in real time, making it both functional and immersive. Jeff explained that they didn't want the healing mechanic to feel like a gimmick. It needed to serve a real purpose in the gameplay, influencing the player's strategy by showing the risk and reward during combat in real time. I've gained a lot of respect for what Raven Software accomplished with this game, and I hope we get to see more from them outside of the Call of Duty series in the future. So after revisiting X-Men Origins Wolverine, I can confidently say that this game absolutely holds up. Despite its flaws like some clunky platforming and dated mechanics, it nails what matters most, making you feel like Wolverine. The combat is brutal, fast-paced, and incredibly satisfying, with enough variety to keep things interesting throughout. The attention to detail, especially with Wolverine's healing ability and those epic boss battles, make this game stand out even after all these years. It's clear that Raven Software put a lot of passion into this project, delivering a game that far surpassed its movie counterpart and left a lasting impression on fans. I just wish they had the chance to make more games like this instead of being stuck in the Call of Duty machine. Whether you're a Wolverine fan or just love a solid action game, if you can get your hands on a copy, it's definitely worth revisiting. Here's hoping Insomniac's upcoming Wolverine game can capture that same magic. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what you thought of the game, or if you've got any other superhero games you think are underrated.